Now I want to show you how far I've gotten. I've really only been doing this for about 45 minutes, an hour. Unbelievable. I mean, maybe 2 hours to do this top, or an hour and a half or so. That aside, it's not about going faster or slow. It works up beautifully quickly. Now I just want to tell you what my logic is in here. You can see my wave, okay? Now, oh, excuse me. Now I just want to show you in here. I had read, again, on one of my tutorials, I'm sort of plagiarizing from a million different things that I've learned myself and just doing this more visually than with instructions or a pattern. I learned that these, you shouldn't really cut a strip less than about an inch, what was it, an inch and a quarter. Well, I cut these about, I think I got them about 3/4 of an inch, and that's fine, it's fine. But what I wanted to show you now is this wide a quilt, which is, let me see how wide this is so far. This is 28 inches wide. Now I've gotten 28 inches of quilt width, my top left quarter of my quilt, and all I have, and then it's however long that is, whatever long. So what I'm saying about is the size of my quilt as I go along. Obviously, I could have had it wider. I was working with, what, 42-inch wide strip sets? I could have had it wider had I not had so many seams. I have a tremendous amount of 1/4-inch seams. Look at all my seams there. Can you see that? Oh, I'm just so proud of that. Look at that. Look at those seams. Oh, that is, oh, look how pretty it looks on the back. I think so pretty. That is the trick to BARGELLO quilting, is the sewing a 1/4-inch seam, sewing your strips together, whatever size strips. You can have 2-inch strips, and actually, and then the ironing, of course. And actually, what you can do, or if you didn't want to have, if you wanted to change it up, you don't have to have the same size 2.5-inch strips. You could add a strip 9 inches, 10 inches, and just had one swathe of solid fabric. You don't have to do this. You can change this up. You can use as many strips. You can use as wide as strips. This just happens to be 2.5-inch strips, but I was sub-cutting. I'm cutting strips, I'm sewing strips, and I'm sub-cutting strips. I was cutting strips very, very small because I want to make this, as you can see. You see my wave? Look how pretty. True BARGELLO, my wave goes up and then a very, very big, like, ski slope down. Now, I am left, I wanted to show you here, am I in the frame? Yeah. I am left with this bit. That's it. That's what I'm left with. This bit of my strip set, my 2 of them. Remember, my other pile's over there very, very, very carefully. I've taken my top one over and put it on my pile so that when I join it, I will have this exact replica down there joining my top. So I've taken it. Now this is what is left. Now this is all crummy, and that's all crummy. So now I have to think, do I want to, on this one, what could I get out of here? It's to about there. I could get 2 more. I think I'm going to do 2 more smaller strips and make it come right down, so I have a real thin slope. And then with my other strip sets for my other top right side, when I start cutting and I add it to the width of my quilt here, I can get a little bit wider, and maybe I can go up again or even go back down again. But right now I like that slope, and I can get 2 strips out of this last bit of strip set. So I'm gonna attach it over there, and I'm gonna line it all up real careful. It's a little bit wider than my last one, maybe even a little bit wider. I'm gonna take my strip set very, very carefully. I have it laid very, very carefully on top of my other, so when I go to sew my bottom half, I'll have the exact same pattern, the exact same strip width, and then I just attach it on this bottom seam, and it will just continue. If you can see, it'll continue that whole going up and going down, because it's the exact same look. So here's this strip set. Let me come over here, and what I've done, again, you can see all my seams, but I've pressed, I've ironed. I come up here and I'll show, let me see the gray. I want to come down yet one again. I want to have a little bit more movement. I open that up, and then I'll sew that onto there. And if you can see, I have just that much more movement. And so what I'm doing, as you can see that, I am designing this quilt as I go along. Now you can see that this end here, this is coming forward because it's big. And then the dark, it's retreating. That, it's going in the background. And that's the whole purpose. Now as I get over here and I start cutting that strip set to add to that bit, I'll do it wider, and then I might do way down there another tiny little bit and make that beautiful wave. But you can see I have a swathe of black, white, green, pink, and then back to black, white, green, and pink. So I'm just going to finish up, and then I'm just going to finish this up, and there, right there, is a little baby quilt. Look, there's a sweet little baby quilt. You put a little binding on it, you're done. And that really is simple. So when they say a Bargello is simple, I keep repeating, it's the cutting, the precise cutting, and it's the precise ironing. And the stitching, all we are doing is sewing long strips. Done. Long strips. That's it. Done. So let me just finish this up on this strip set. My progress. I'm going to finish. I've been working on this just for a few hours now this evening. And this is one strip set, 40 inches or 42 inches wide by 20 strips. Okay? Now that's what size with this amount of seams makes. Okay? So that's the size of my quilt. Let me see if it's hanging down there. That's the size of my quilt, which measures 30 inches by 40. Measures exactly 30 by 40. Okay? That is using 2.5 inch strips. So it's a little baby quilt. So I suppose, so my next one will be 30 by 40. So that'll be 30 by 80. So my quilt will be 80 inches long. You know, give or take 1 or 2 seams there. Because I've already done that strip set. Now, if I did this same configuration, with the amount of seams, my quilt would measure obviously 60 by 80, a decent size throw, a small twin, right? But I'm gonna design it as I go along. Now I love this wave here, this ski slope, but I might not make such tiny seams as I go along. Obviously, as I keep saying, the more seams you have, the smaller your quilt's going to be, but the more dramatic. Now you see how this comes out, the side comes out. It's sort of bold and in your face, and then it just goes away to nothing. So this is a design as you go. I could make this one the same and make this wider here. Maybe I'll do that instead of stepping it up. I'm not sure. I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna get my strip set. Now what I wanted to show you, I'm gonna finish up right now. For this evening, what I wanted to show you is how I let me just see if this is in, yeah. This is my pile. Doesn't have to go on my ruler. This is my pile that I very, very carefully made. Remember, these are my strips that are the exact size going from the bottom over, the exact size of my quilt top. So when I go to put these together, I'm going to be very, very, very careful. Now again, if you were real organized, you might want to label them, you know, row 1, row 2, because they do, the smaller ones get a bit, you know, I didn't measure them. But I'm okay with that. I don't have a cat or anything, or kids, little kids that are going to knock them over. So I can just leave them like that and then turn it over and very, very carefully do the exact same fabric placement, the exact same arrangement. But by all means, if this one you want to label, you don't have to label like this is 1.5 inches. You could just want to label it however many rows, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many rows we have, if that's how you want to do it. But I'm okay with it just like that. I lifted it up, I took it over, and I did that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very, very careful with this. If I drop these, I'm really screwed. But I won't drop them. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put that over there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing with this strip set. Now, excuse me, I'm stuttering. What I was doing is I was cutting my strip. I was placing it. I was seeing where it belonged. I was seeing how it looked. I cut it. I saw how it looked. I unpicked it. I ripped it. I saw how it looked and I placed it where I wanted. I took it over to my machine. I then got up and I took it over to my iron. And I ironed it really well with a little bit of spritz of water on the side and a little bit of starch to make it just lie beautifully. So this project, I'm up and down, up and down, up and down. And the quilt is evolving as we design it. So by all means, this is what I'm saying, design it yourself. There's a picture online, but it doesn't look anything like it because I went down a little bit further. Oh, that's upside down, but isn't that pretty? So, but I have to make sure when I go to sew it, obviously, that my green, doesn't matter when it's all done, there's no right or top, but that for when I go to sew the bottom, which is identical, that my green's up at the top. So now I'm just going to address this strip set exactly the same. I'm going to make sure it's all nice and even. All my lines are straight across. I have no puckers, nothing. Everything is straight. I then take the edge, the nasty, horrible edge off. Where is it? Where is it? It's about to there. About to there. Straighten it all up. And so you lose 1 inch or so. That's okay. And back to there. I'm going to straighten it all up. And hold this. And whack that edge off. And there I go. Again, pick this up. And then I have my pile 1 for my bottom left. This will be my pile 2 for my bottom right. And then when we can, but this one I will just keep adding. I'll just keep adding to my top, the top of my quilt, the top portion of my quilt. I'm just going to keep adding strips from my new strip set to the top of my quilt and make it however big it's going to be and whatever design I choose. And the only organization you really need is keeping the bottom set exactly, because you're going to be making this exact same quilt top, as wide as it on the bottom. So I will be back though, but this is pretty much the basics of a BARGELLO quilt. I am so pleased how it's turned out. But I will be back. I wanted to show you how far along I've come in making my BARGELLO quilt. Boy oh boy, when I say it's easy, it's really easy. I get it now. All you're doing is sewing long strips together. All these seams don't matter. I just keep telling you, ironing, ironing, iron, and sewing really precisely. So what I've done here is, as you saw, let me just move that. I've made my green go up very thin. It's going away from me. I've come down in a swoop, and I'm going up with thicker wider, I should say, pieces. So that's sort of advancing, and now I'm going to finish my quilt with it going up as far as the green will go. This is measuring now. This is the top of my quilt, not done yet, but it's measuring from this side so far to there, 54 inches. So I just wanted to show you what my 80, or this is 40 inches, my top half, what my strip set has yielded. So this is the what's left of my second strip set, or my 2 strip sets that are left. Remember, this is the one I'm working with now, and this is the bottom one, which I've taken over. So now I have 2 piles to finish, to do the bottom half, bottom left half, bottom right half. But right now I'm going to be finishing the top. I'm going to be finishing up the top of my quilt, and I have that much left. So again, I've done lots and lots of seams which make the movement, and I'm going to be doing that seam. I'm going to be doing it up there a little bit small. So my quilt starts out quite wide, quite, advancing towards you, and then it recedes, advances again, and then it recedes into the right hand side. So I reckon, what I'm getting at, I reckon that this quilt will end up about 60 inches, maybe a little bit wider, maybe 62 inches by it's 39 inches long. So it will end up 78 inches, about 62 by 78 inches, a very decent size throw quilt, small twin size. I thought it was going to be bigger, but as I've learned, by trial and error here, the more seams you make, obviously, the smaller your quilt's going to be. This has tons of seams, which I quite like, to give the movement. So I will have used when I do my bottom. When I do my bottom half, I will have used 80 strips, 80 2.5-inch strips. Now, to make this queen size, maybe you'd want to add another 40 strips to make 6 strip sets, so you have 3 across and 3 down. I'll address that in the beginning of this tutorial. But there is my top half, almost finished, of my Bargello quilt. As you can see, I'm getting thinner and thinner, and I just think it's gorgeous. It's like a watermelon almost. It's the black and the pink and the green and that swathe of white. And I have designed this as I've gone along. I had quite a few pictures up on my computer. I gave that up. I'm like, I'm just going to do what takes me. So I want it to come down. Now again, what my thinking is, this is the top half, so I'm going to have the exact same pattern on this. I'm going to have the exact same green down here going up. I'm going to have it going down. So I wanted I see green. I see my green as my boldness. So I wanted this green to sort of punctuate my quilt from middle to top, coming down to bottom, up to the middle again, coming a bit down, and then going back up all the way on my side. So that was my thought in this color placement, and obviously with a Bargello, color placement is what it's all about. So I have this left for my top, and then I'm going to just construct my 2 bottom pieces, which I have my strips nice and stacked, so I know exactly what to grab so that they coordinate exactly here, and then I will sew this seam together with top and bottom. I'm over here at my sewing machine, and I just wanted to show you sewing these strips together. Now I'm coming up, I'm using, as you can see, a very small strip. Now I have and you might just be wondering, and this is just for your information, I have my strip, my stitch length about at 2. It's not real tight, but it's not real loose either, so I can just rip them apart. By all means, if you want to do it a bit tighter, you can, and then use a proper seam ripper. You saw that I didn't do that. Now I am using, even on these small ones, I am using a proper 1/4 inch seam. As you can see, my seams are nesting beautifully. this one is going up and this one's going down. And so again, just like when I'm sewing my strips together, I have everything loose. I've sewed it all properly, and then I can just niggle and feel that nesting of that seam right there. This one's going down, that bottom one's going up. I can feel that. And I've just, again, keeping everything nice and straight in front of you. My end, this is coming to the top right hand side of my quilt. My seams are going all opposites direction, and I'm going smaller. I'm wanting this part of my quilt to recede. Now, somebody said something about Malia having her fingers close, and somebody said, "Oh my goodness, you have your fingers so close." I have never. I do have my fingers. I'm looking at. I'm trying to not freak you people out. I can do this. I've been sewing for a million years, and I know I'm not gonna go over my fingers. These are just nesting beautifully, and even though I'm working with just a little sliver, I know that these things will match almost perfectly. Again, if they're not perfect, it's fine. And then right off. And then what I advise you to do is, when you go over to your machine, to your ironing board, I want you to set this seam very carefully. Set that seam, and then I'm spritzing it with a bit of water to sort of shrink it, because the ironing is all important here. And then I have it in front of me like this, and then I'm bringing the iron and I'm just rolling that over towards me, not pulling anything, letting it lay flat where it wants to lay, and then just ironing that down. So as you can see, I have all my seams going in one direction. So when I take it over to my ironing board, I'm going to set that seam, and then just even with these little seams, I'm just going to roll that. And you're not wanting to handle this little piece too much, because your stitches will come out. But I've not had any trouble with that at all. And once I stitch it, everything is nice and firm, and I have all my lovely 1/4 inch seams all going the same way, as you can see. I wanted to show you my finished, almost finished top half of my Bargello quilt. You've seen me making it. You see the black, the pinks, and the whites going down to the greens. Now, this is my last strip, and as you can see, I'm doing that. It's receding. I'm doing the little tiny strips there. I cut them perhaps an inch, so they finish at about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. Now, I have one more strip to cut to finish this top bit, and that is here. I've been cutting my strips. Now, again, you see all of this is all rubbish. Now, I want my strip to finish quite narrow, like that, so it's sort of going up to nothingness, the green there. But what I'm going to be doing, since this is going to be my outside seam, my outside piece on my right-hand side of my quilt, I'm not putting a border on this quilt. This is just it. This is the last one. So I will be binding this edge right here. I'll be binding that edge and the top edge and the side. So what this last piece, I want to be mindful of my binding, and still making it so it's sort of thin. Oh, my ugly hands. Ugh. So it's thin. So I'll make that a little bit wider, this last piece, because I have to make it, well, there's my 2. I have to make it wider anyway. I have to use up this, I can't use this up bit because it's all rubbish, the selvage edges. So I'll just make this piece wider, and then that will be my last piece on this side of my quilt, which is about 60 inches wide, maybe 61 inches. the top. It'll shrink down a bit. And then it's long. It's sort of a longer quilt. So I'm going to be putting that piece there, a little bit wider, so that when I put my binding on, you'll still see a narrow piece, if that makes any sense to you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go get my strip sets that I have all nice piled in a neat order, that I cut them from exactly. And then I'll continue my strip set for my bottom left corner, and my strip set for my bottom right corner. And then I will sew them along the edge of my quilt here. And then my quilt top is done, ready to be quilted. What I will do is I'm going to do a basting stitch on the top there, because I have all those seams. So I'm just going to do a small basting stitch. Be very careful, press it where the fabric wants to go, do a nice basting stitch, and then when I'm finished this side, just like I did on the other side, my basting stitch, my stay stitch I should say, my stay stitch, I'll do a stay stitch there because of all those little seams to finish the edges off, because there's a lot of seams. But I'll tell you, this Bargello, I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased the way it's turned out so far. So far, the top half of my Bargello quilt is done.